Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today for yet another episode of Pathways to Excellence. We have here, truly indeed, one of Malaysia's bright and shining excellent characters of 2023, Mr. Jia Shing right here. How are you doing, Jia Shing? Thanks so much for doing this interview.
Yeah, of course. It's just been, a typical day after work. Grab some dinner with you. Now we're here.
But we do need some protein though, because we ended up basically in a vegetarian restaurant. Ariel, it was great, but we will need some protein right there. Alright, cool. Okay, so just for a little bit of context right here, so Jia Shing, great guy, one of our quote-unquote national treasures. I say, excuse me, very kind of you, but literal national treasure. So Khazanah Scholar, current student at UCLA, and maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit right here.
Alright, sure. Hi everyone, my name is Jia Shing. I normally go by JS because those are my initials. I'm currently back in Malaysia. I'm a rising junior at UCLA. I'm back in Malaysia for my internship. I'm doing an actuarial pricing internship in Allianz Life Malaysia. Met Victor during USApps 2022, I believe.
2022, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And I was the call for that. I have a bunch of great people. And for any of you guys out there watching this, trying to apply to the US, watch out for USApps 2024. It's going to be a great bunch of people leading that again.
Shout out.
All of the videos for this year's recording is on YouTube, so if you just search USApps, that's USApps 2023. You can see all the recording from this year. It's like 12 hours worth of application content. We were both there this year again. So yeah, it's all available for free. Go check it out.
Alright, cool. Alright, maybe would you share a little bit about your academic background, like how you, I guess, went from your early years up until, getting Khazanah Scholarship and eventually coming to UCLA. Well, actually, even before that, so where are you from originally?
Alright, so I'm originally from Malacca, born and bred, whole of my 17 years, historic state of Malacca. I did my primary school there. I went to SJKC. That's where I picked up Chinese because both my parents were English educated.
I see.
That's where I picked Mandarin. And then I went
SJKC what?
SJKC Yongbin.
Yongbin, okay.
Yeah. And then I went to SMK San Francisco Institution, Catholic school, all boys school. So I went there. I was always very active in joining things like prefectorial board and Sharahan competition.
Sharahan competition. That was speech, right? Legit Malay speech.
Yes.
You went for Malay speech. Damn, bro.
It's like public speaking. It's like Malay public speaking competition.
Malay public speaking competition.
Yeah, it's about perpaduan and stuff. So it was a whole thing when I was in primary. Representing the school and stuff. It was all I guess, at the time you don't think much about it. I think very early on I was exposed to the idea that school shouldn't limit education. It's a very normal thing for people to say at college, but very early on I kind of believe that academics shouldn't be the be-all and-all kind of thing. Make sure you have an enriching for holistic, which is why the US education is very appealing to me.
Okay.
So yeah, so it sort of didn't think much about it, but then it adds up. And then after SPM, my parents gave apply for scholarship, because I didn't have the financial background to study overseas if I wanted to. So the plan was honestly study in Taylor's and do my A-levels. But as I applied to Khazanah, I just took a shot.
After you did your whole if you applied to Khazanah in the very first place, then 9 A+?
No. Actually no, 6 A+ and 3 A.
What?
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, I was kind of under that. So for some context, I went to this camp called.
That is impressive. I always thought that basically they will only accept people who are 9 A+. But it seems that it's more holistic than that.
Right.
I
went to this camp. I don't know if you've heard it before. PKTR.
Yeah.
Program Kepimpinan Tu Razak, where I met a bunch. My first time meeting a bunch of people from Mara, people from KYS. These huge schools that they. Turn out 10 A+, 10 students with straight A+ every year. In my school, we barely have one a year. The year that we have one straight A+, it's insane. It's we put it on our bulletin and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, Malaysian schools, they love that.
Right.
They love that.
It was a very big culture shock to go there. So I was kind of, when my mom, told me to apply, I kind of just told her there's no way, right? Because I'm not even straight A+, I got 6 A+, right? But yeah, I kind of appreciate that Khazanah's process was a lot more holistic. They have a reasoning test or online reasoning assessment skills sort of thing, and then it was 3 rounds of interviews.
Okay.
I guess they were very holistic. There, this personality testing and everything. So I appreciate that they really did change my life.
Wow. Okay. And you went on to KYUEM,
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, 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 cool.
You might have.
All right. Okay. So let's go a little bit more into, I guess, like what, well, having a scholarship entails there. So then, can you share a little bit more about like, well, what it means that you're a Khazanah scholar? Like, I guess, like in terms of like the expected pathway that you know of, like after you graduate.
A very typical, just to lay out like the typical Khazanah scholarship like pathway. You do your A levels in KYUEM, and then you do your undergraduate in wherever you're gonna do it, whether US or UK. They're kind of pushing for people to do it in the US, but then you have to take A levels and SATs at the same time, things like that. And then once you're done with the undergraduate, so there are a few ways that you can serve your bond. Primarily, I think everyone is it's compulsory for everyone to apply to Khazanah for work, which is Khazanah National Berhad or Khazanah Research Institute, and depends on whether they have a vacancy available and they're going to take you. If they don't have the vacancy available, like for a position that you want, then you're open to serve in any GLCs, any of their subsidiaries, right? So that kind of depends on the situation. That's a very typical path.
I see. Okay. Interesting. What do you mean when you say that they sway people towards the US?
I think what I meant by that is that they're pushing for scholars to pursue a US education. So right from the get-go, I think
That's interesting. Wow.
yeah, they don't make it compulsory or anything, but they do sort of like encourage students because they recognize that maybe it's a more holistic education system.
That's interesting. I mean, like,
Yeah.
can you give me an interaction that would suggest that you want people to study in the US?
I guess they don't explicitly say like, up until now, Khazanah scholars can still choose whether or not they want to pursue a US education because it is more work. You kind of need to take the SATs on top of A levels.
And it also costs like a ton more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of, I think once you're accepted, I think at the end of your first year at KY, I believe, am I correct? Or like maybe half a year into KY,
Yeah.
after your first semester, I think, the Khazanah scholarship managers, at least during my time, they came to KY just to check in with everyone.
Yeah.
They regularly do, even now that we're in the US or UK. And then they sort of, just open out the floor and be like, oh, you guys, we offer like a coaching service to like look through your personal statements, to guide you through SATs and things like that. Very much like what you're doing. And then they sort of just like, that they provide that for free, they're gonna pay for all of that, and then sort of open up the floor if you want to do that.
By the way, go to America. Just
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that?
They don't say it very explicitly, but personally, I can endorse the US education system. I think it's a very holistic,
Okay.
it's a very holistic education system.
Wow. Okay. Can you share a little bit about what you've experienced in UCLA so far? So, like, maybe just for context, for those of you out there who have not heard of UCLA before. So, UCLA is basically short for the University of California, Los Angeles. What is it like actually being there, and how is it like different from your experience maybe studying in Malaysia?
I guess there's not a very fair comparison to make because I only have my college education in the US, so I don't know how is it like in institutions in Malaysia like UM or UKM, which are also really
Truly said with a quality of judgment that is trained on it. Okay, not trained in the US, but that's a good judgment thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't really sort of make a very fair comparison, but I do feel like because the course I take is Financial and Actuarial Mathematics, which is I guess very technical. It's like finance, it's maths. So I guess it always has a very lecturer student sort of way of teaching. Just like how you learn maths all the time, right? There's not really going to be a lot of interaction. It's not like humanities, but I will say that because in the US there's this thing called general education that you take outside of your core classes, I guess. So you kind of have to make sure you get your foundation of arts and foundation of sciences out of the way. They have this like history and stuff like that you have to learn. So in my first year, I took this cluster course called America in the 60s. You learn about, again, because it's America, they sort of think the world revolves around them, which But yeah, I took a 3-quarter course, which is like a year-long course about American history, America in the 60s. And I guess the classes were very, very interactive. They have this thing, they have like lectures and discussions that separate. They really do try to encourage students to speak up and engage in discussions. I think that's like a bit of something that I was not used to when I first got there. So I guess that's something different. Other than that, I think quality of education is pretty much similar. What I can speak to is like outside of classes, like the opportunity to learn. Like I talked about just now how school shouldn't limit your education, right? So like outside of classes, there's a bunch of ways to learn, whether it's clubs, whether even like for me, I'm working with the library. And even then I get to take sort of ownership of my work. I'm not just at the
You
front.
work in a library. Tell me more about that.
The UCLA library. So so everyone vies for a library job, right? You know that, right?
Okay, no, I did not know that. Tell me more.
Because library
You don't have like the whole librarian card, right? Wow.
it was not like that in Chicago. Like,
Well, no, not necessarily. Yeah,
Just
but
like-
librarian, I guess like you get to like sit down and then you get to like read books the entire time, and then like
you get to do your work.
you get to do your work. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to do your own stuff while getting paid. And then when people come up and ask you questions, oh, the toilet is that way, your book is that way, and then you're done. Then you get paid like that's like 5%, 10% of the time, 90% of the time you can't really do your own bit. Which is why a lot of people try to get library job. And I guess I was very lucky I got in to do like a front desk job, right? But I guess about like a year in, I was sort of approached by one of the permanent staff, and they were looking for people to do some data analysis. And they knew that I have an actuarial background, so then I was sort of took on this like data analyst role for the library, analyzing their transactions, their quarterly transactions, things like that. Which I think was just like I didn't expect that when I first got in. Just like I appreciate having a lot of ownership over my work, and I think
Okay.
yeah, I think that's like one of my highlights of my time at UCLA.
That really sounds like you actually got to put into practice like some of the things that you learned like in your school curriculum as well.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So, amazing. Can you give me an example of something that you would actually like find out as a result of, I guess, like analyzing library data? A random example.
Right. So I think the key thing as always like this is sort of like consultant role. So I guess like being their front desk workers, you kind of know like every quarter, as a library they try to implement new system, new policies
I see.
for the
Okay.
patrons. Then at the end of every quarter you sort of analyze to see if that change had a real impact, like how you measure it.
I see.
Opening the library for extra 1 hour at the end of the day,
I see.
that actually increase transactions. That
Okay.
actually people have loan more stuff out.
Okay. I was like thinking like, if people start like, for example, borrowing like, I don't know, like the Communist Manifesto that would suggest that basically, well, we need to do something right there.
No.
Okay, I'm kidding. All right, okay. So then I guess like now that you experience this right here, I mean like, do you feel that your education has in any way like changed your thoughts about, I guess, like Malaysia or like how you see it as of like right now? Even before we even go into that, right? So then like, I guess what are your thoughts about Malaysia? And like, I realize that this might be like kind of hard to, I guess, like pin back down to like your 17-year-old self, because like a person is what they are, right? Like you can't very well like go back in time and say like, hey, can you dial back and tell me like how you felt about Malaysia like all those years ago? But
Right.
I guess like if you could try maybe to like think about how, I guess, like your thinking about Malaysia has changed in these past couple of years, right? Like ever since you, I guess, like left for the US, like how would you say that it has changed?
Right.
And how has your education affected that?
I would say like I kind of thought that, I guess as a child I was very much like restricted to like being in Malacca. I sort of thought that the world was just what I knew, right? What I could perceive that was the world. I always hear adults talking about how Malaysia is not in a good state compared to the other developed countries and things like that. I kind of just didn't really take it to heart. I'm like, things are well. I can afford food. You still see people going out for like going out to have a good time. They still seem to have a lot of things, right? So I think my 17-year-old self was quite naive. I didn't really have much to complain about, and I guess that's just my nature. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who tries to identify a problem and be like and screw down, and drew down on it. I would very much like to sort of make, even like with things like USApps, like making changes, moving the needle, sort of stuff. I think it's just a bit of my nature. But yeah, going to the US, I think that just, especially in terms of like sensitive topic, but like earning potential and things like that, you can definitely see a very vast difference, right? Like people, just talking to my friends, like they're doing internships and over the summer they're gonna earn like $30,000 and my monthly salary is like 1,000 ringgit. And I tell my friends that they're working for $250 a month. like US dollars, and it's just like insane for them. That's like they earn that. I have a friend who's doing like software engineering. He earns 35 per hour, I think. So basically, he earns my monthly wage, sort of on his first day before lunch, type of thing, right? So I think that was just like a bit. It's very startling to see like how the disparity in earning potential, and of course, I think with most Malaysian students as well, you start thinking about whether I want to stay there, accumulate some wealth, and then come back in 5 to 10 years time. I kind of went through that process a little bit, but you're doing some introspection, and again, like doing the hard thing, which is what you said, like going back to your 17-year-old self and feeling the kind of feeling when I was applying for the scholarship, and you would say things like, "Oh, of course, I'll come back and serve Malaysia and serve the people," which at that time was very believable to yourself, right? You want it to be true as well. You want to sell it, like you want to sell it to the scholarship managers, and when I think back to that period of time when I first got the scholarship, like Khazanah Scholarship, how grateful I was, like how much that pivoted my life. So I just felt like it's a bit of, in Malay we call it amanah, which is like trust. It's sort of like when they give you the scholarship, they also put a lot of trust in you. Even though sure you can pay back the money and stuff, it's sort of like a transaction, but they also invested in your potential to sort of contribute to Malaysia, right? So I think I am by nature also a bit emotional in that sense, so I am very much inclined to serve my board in Malaysia.
I see. Wow, that is very admirable, and just well applaud you for that. Wow. Okay. So this amanah, as it were, right?
Right.
Okay. I respect that you have essentially this feeling that you have been trusted, that you have like something vested upon you, and what I would like to kind of follow up with then is, what would you like to do, I guess, in order to fulfill, in some sense, that trust that you feel upon your life?
Right. I think it's a bit overinflating my importance to think that the nation has vested in me to contribute, like they're depending on me. Obviously, they're not. They're a lot more like.
Even if they contribute 1.2 million ringgit to your education.
I mean, like, it is an investment from the country's perspective, but I don't think, like, for instance, the chairman of Khazanah knows my name or that they invested in me particularly. But I do think, like, at least the people who vetted for me, like, the scholarship manager, the people who were doing the interview felt that I was a good investment. I feel like I sort of owe it to them, not just to pay it forward to other Malaysians through things like, USApps and other endeavors, but of course, to pay back directly, like by serving my bond and not sort of breaking my bond, right? And you are right that I did think about it. At the end of the day, they want you to come back to be an analyst in Khazanah. Is that really going to contribute to Malaysia as like a bigger part and changing things for the people that really need the change, right? The communities that really need those sort of change. I did think about that, but I think just looking at people who are currently making change in Malaysia, I think a lot of them also follow like a similar pathway. As in, I do believe like you're sort of not limited to your first job in that sense. So I have seen a lot of people in Malaysia, like the people who are currently contributing positively to Malaysia, and they sort of pivot quite a lot, and they sort of switch career paths. I think previously I simplified it to whether or not working a corporate job can serve Malaysia, but right now I think it's just let me do that first, because I think it's the right thing to do. And when I meet more people as I progress through the corporate ladders, perhaps I'm going to meet some people, network people, and figure out the opportunity is going to come, open doors for myself to serve the people who really need it.
I see. Okay. I think that's a very reasonable answer. And yes, a person can't necessarily say like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and change the world, right? Because like, in some sense, like, you want to fix the world, first you have to fix yourself, right? You have to like get like, from point A to point B and various other things like that, right there. But I want you to imagine with me for a quick bit. Imagine that basically like you had, okay, all right, closing the eyes right there. Wish. Imagine that basically you have the ability to create like infinite change within this country in any way, in any capacity that you want at this point in time. So then, can you give me a read on like the kind of change that you want to do, drive forward or initiate?
If I have the capacity to make any sort of changes,
Any sort of changes, yeah.
and only one aspect, then
All right, I'll be a genie right here, and then just like y'all, like I grant you 3 wishes.
okay.
For 3 changes that you would like to bring upon Malaysia. What's your first wish?
My first wish is how do I put this in words?
Take your time, take your time.
Sort of remove the sort of lens that people, like Malaysians of different ethnicity, tend to look at other races. I feel like I feel it's quite undeniable, at least from a personal perspective. I feel like a lot of people when they look at another person of another ethnicity, there's a certain sort of like lens that they look it through. And I think it's one of the most prevalent problems in Malaysia, you know. And I think just by solving that, I think a lot of issues can be solved through that way. Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Do I need to clarify myself?
So no, I mean like I agree, and I think it's not something that like a lot of people necessarily like talk about on a day-to-day basis. But I 100% agree, because like if you simply were to treat people more on the basis of like their qualities, I guess, then rather than just discriminating or viewing them through your own parochial like ethnic lens right there, I think that we can get a lot more done like within this country. Because like for better or for worse, right? Like even, you know, in a situation of like politics even, right? So like even if like we can see that people have like different views here and there, right? The fact remains that like we will always have each other, right? Like we are a democratic society. We vote in elections, and we're at the heart of it, right? I think that in many ways, right? Like people understand intuitively, like what is good for them. Like, you know, like having a better life. Like, you know, like it can be not just like earning more money, which is like the intuitive thing that a lot of people like think about, but also, you know, like having more trust within your society, and like a sense that there's a common progress, essentially.
Right. I think that's a good way to put it. Instead of like, you know, removing the lens, blah, blah, it's increasing more trust among people of like different ethnicity. I think that's something you mentioned, the trust part. That's gonna go like a long way. I think right now in Malaysia, the scene just looking at Instagram comments as sort of like a way to keep, you know, like understand how the general sentiment is like. It seems like there's a lack of trust between people of different ethnicity, and I think like one of the first things that I would really hope to do is to sort of increase the sort of trust between people of different races. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. Because for better or for worse, like we have this country, we live in it together, and that's not going to stop. You've seen like different people from different races, like on this channel so far, and you've seen the achievement. It isn't something that's restricted to any particular race. You've seen on this channel also people who are from Malay heritage but went to Chinese schools as well, and yeah, that's the sort of thing that you can see right here. Do you have your second wish ready?
My second wish is just, I guess, like, for a lot of Malaysians, at least who want to leave Malaysia, despite how much they love Malaysia, they always say Malaysia is their home, and no matter, if I meet a lot of Malaysians even in California, a lot of them, even adults not working there, will always find for Malaysian, there's the culture, the feeling of being back in Malaysia, the food and all that kind of things. But they sort of feel forced to leave because of the earning potential. They are very tempted by that, and that's fine, you know, because they have their own, right? And they have their own reasons for, you know, wanting to earn more. Another thing I could share, I hope that, you know, I feel like in general, most Malaysians do love Malaysia despite all of its problems. Like, love Malaysia, just the experience of being a Malaysian, right? And yeah, so my wish is probably to increase the earning potential in Malaysia so that people who want to stay in Malaysia can actually stay in Malaysia, right? I think it's a bit of a waste for people to feel forced to leave just because.
You know, that's actually an interesting consideration. Because like some people would then, like somebody else might then rejoin by saying, well, like technically that you can basically live in Malaysia, but it's just that you have to accept a lower earning potential.
Right.
So then like, what would you say in response to that?
Yeah, I mean,
You know, like some people they tend to like moralize kind of thing. Like they say like, oh, you know, like you can't like sacrifice your country like for money, that kind of thing. Or like basically, if you really really love your country, then you shouldn't even think about something like that. What do you say to people like that?
I would say there's this paper by this professor in Stanford. I forgot his name. I read the paper a few weeks back probably, but it's something about like brain drainage versus brain linkage. And there's a new. Have you heard about it?
Well, I haven't read this, but I do remember that there was actually a Stanford study about brain drain from Malaysia specifically.
Oh, really?
A while ago, yeah. And
Okay.
it was in fact like observing that Malaysia is one of the biggest sources of brain drain basically in the modern world, even in the modern times. Which is also why it's like very interesting to speak to you. Somebody who actually has like convictions, right? Like, of course, you know, like Khazanah isn't going to hold on to you necessarily for like 10 years down the line, right? And I don't know how your decision is going to change. But like the you of right now, like you have essentially these like convictions, which I can see right now. And essentially, yeah, like it's just interesting to think about that, right? And of course, like we wouldn't want to hold you do something right there, right? But
Yeah.
for all we know, like in another state of the world, you could continue to stay in Malaysia. Like that's also a possibility. But yeah. But sorry, I think I interrupted you. Like
Yeah. So the paper sort of
the people.
talk about like how the old perspective is like people going out of country, that's brain drainage, and that's bad in and of itself, because you lose talent and stuff like that. But then they do a study into like brain linkage, which is like it is okay for people to leave the country. It doesn't mean that you won't contribute to the your host, like your country of birth. So long, and it goes beyond like money remittances, right? You sort of contribute by having a lot of let's say Malaysians in the US. And as long as you keep that community alive, sort of they don't break the tie with Malaysia, you have a strong community of talented Malaysians abroad that can actually contribute Malaysia in terms of on a more macro scale, right? Like developing like international relations, you know, between and bringing in investor relations to Malaysia. So that in and of itself is, you know, you shouldn't think about the people leaving Malaysia as necessarily a bad thing, sort of. And the reason why I would say this, like this money, like a lot of the reason why people leave Malaysia is because it's the earning potential. Is because like in that paper there's also like a case study on Taiwan, how I think in the late 90s, Taiwan was one of the countries with the most severe brain drainage problem. You know, like 20% of the 20% of college students are studying overseas, and only about 8% of the 20% come back to Taiwan, right? And that's a huge percentage, right?
Wow. Okay.
So there's a 92% people to study overseas staying overseas. But then the government started investing into things like what's that thing called? TSMC. They do semiconductors, yeah. So they start investing in the semiconductor industry, and that, you know, boomed the whole that whole industry, and that actually led a lot of people to come back to Taiwan, and because that industry in and of itself is quite like has a very high earning potential, right? And that actually pulled a lot of I guess Taiwanese back.
Yes. I almost forgot. You had one more wish.
Yeah. What is my one wish? Money.
Also got your last wish, right?
I'll run it to you. What I would love to hear. What would you like to? What would you wish for Malaysia?
Well, are you allowed to do that? grant the genie
I
a wish.
wish.
It's like basically like Aladdin basically wishing to say, Genie, I wish for you to be free.
Right. Yeah. I want you to have a wish. Yeah. I want to hear from your perspective.
Well, I wish for people to be able to say that Malaysia is where they come from with a proud look on their face and with the recognition that their country is a strong power that is vested in genuine leadership, not a place where corruption prevails, where people comment on social media posts only to say, oh, that's the country that switched 4 prime ministers in 4 years, right? I saw a video from Joe Broseph just earlier today.
Oh gosh.
Which Asian are you right now? But I want people to be able to proudly declare that they are from Malaysia and not just look down and just sit there like, yeah.
I think I'm still quite proud to say I'm Malaysian, but just by you know, because not a lot of Americans know what Malaysia is. I think at least my college.
The country above Singapore.
Exactly. That is which I always fall back on. That's like my default.
Okay.
Where I'm from Malaysia. It's I would just immediately be like, oh, it's near Singapore. I wouldn't even wait because most of the time they don't really know where that is. But yeah, I think that's a really nice wish. I would you know.
Can I change my wish slightly, or is it too late?
Yeah, I'll grant you that wish.
Wow, you're the real genie. Yeah, I want more people to know that there are extremely talented people with good hearts out there, like my brother right here. Right there.
That's really nice. But he came back to Malaysia too. He went to Chicago and he came back to Malaysia too, right?
That's
But, you know,
that's true.
As long as I know, and as I said just now, like brain drainage is an issue sort of for Malaysia. We do hope that, you know, maybe as long as there's a balance of people, of talented people who want to stay in Malaysia, and of course then, you know, some people choose the other way, but you know, I guess on a more policy side of things, I hope the Malaysian government as well can, I think they do actually, cultivate the Malaysian community abroad, wherever they are. I think they have a very strong one in Korea, they have a very strong one, even in West Coast as well. Like, just keeping Malaysians together, I think that's gonna be quite good. Instead of like, if you work overseas, that's like, you sort of abandon your country. It's not necessarily the case, yeah.
Well, there are people like Nadia Makarin. Have you heard of Nadia Makarin before?
It's actually not.
Nadia Makarin, the founder of Gojek, billionaire politician, essentially went to Harvard Business School, came back to Indonesia. Also partly because of like leaders, influencers like that you know, people actually come back to Malaysia. Okay. This is going to be one of the last questions in the interview, right here. But if you were to try to persuade right now people who are living outside of Malaysia to come back to Malaysia, what would you say to them?
I think persuasion is a very very personalized art. You get what I mean?
Oh, but we're not talking about theory right here. So
right. I guess I wouldn't know what is the best way to put, and I don't even know if I want to persuade people to come back if that's not what they want. But
right. Okay. Yeah. Fair.
So if I were to say, let's say, what would I think would be? Let's say if I chose to go overseas, what would be effective to persuade myself to come back? I think it really depends.
You're struggling right there.
I'm struggling. I feel like I'm on hit hot shit. It's been like really a lot of introspection, a lot of like thinking. How would I persuade someone to come back to Malaysia?
Yeah. That's the question. Yeah.
That's a really good question.
No worries. It's not necessarily even a question that like you can answer yourself, right? Like it's also a question that I would find difficult as well, right? Like, I mean, you know, in the same way that you granted me the wish earlier, so that I would direct the question to myself, right? And I would say like, you know, there are things that maybe appeal to each person right there. I think that like for me, at the very least, you know, that's the decision to come back to Malaysia based on like, you know, like family ties and a lot of other things right there. But also, I guess like a desire to contribute to a project that isn't actually completed just yet, while at the same time maintaining a part of like my national identity. Because for better or for worse, maybe like there could have been another life, another world, another civilization where maybe I could have been born without this thing that was called Malaysia right here. And maybe like things would have been different right here. And I think that maybe like a person need not necessarily always, I guess, like look towards nationality. Some people like say that it is something that's beyond them, but for me it is important. And I want to contribute towards that thing that is important to me. And there's no like rational reason for that. But it's more of like, you know, if you see like something in that right there, then I would say that like, yeah, like definitely it's something worthwhile and we can work together on that project right there. Okay then. Now, I guess as we come towards the last phase of this interview, so 2 questions. 1, what advice do you have for people who are, I guess, like pursuing like education like within Malaysia right now and in the world at large?
One of the things that I recently read and sort of resonated with me is this concept of do hard things, right? For instance, in college admission, right, if you're trying to get into Harvard, why would they want you to, let's say, play chess at an international level? Or in another way, like maybe take like, I don't know, 10, 12 AP classes, right? All of these are proof that you can do hard things. And at a very young age, if I had to do it all over again, I think I would seek out this harder problem to solve. Not just for the, I mean, of course, you know, maybe it will help my college admissions, application process and things like that. But I do think there is some value, I think, for people at a young age. Maybe like, you know, even in high school, maybe you're part of if I had to do it again at least, maybe I was part of the prefectorial board, let's say, right? I would try to learn how to identify problems fast and then come up with solution and then iterate really fast, and you take action on it really fast. So I think even at whatever stage that you're at in your life right now, even in relationships, right? If you're able to, instead of like, okay, this thing is not working out, if you're able to sort of, the easy thing is to like, dip, is to just chow. But I guess like a good way to think about it is if it's a problem and figure out ways to actively solve it. I think that's sort of something that is very valuable for people in general to cultivate. It can help in your business, relationships, everything else. So yeah, you won't succeed every time, but I think it hones something in you that, especially if you start solving hard problems, it hones that self-confidence that, I can do it. Have the I can do it attitude, and then you believe that, when you come across new problems, you have a track record of successes that you have
So like,
handled.
I succeeded on this in the past, so I have proof that I can do it. So then why can't I do something that's like just a little bit beyond that?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. My final question for you, I guess. Then, do you have like any, I guess, thing that you want to share with like the next generation, like as a part of like your legacy or like the things that you want to, I guess, like leave behind for the future?
I'm still very, very young to leave a legacy. Leave behind for the younger. I'm part of the younger generation. But what would I want to leave? I think if you guys are currently applying for scholarship, or if you guys are currently pursuing your undergraduate studies, especially if you are going into uni this year, try to sort of instead of moving very quickly onto the next thing and then the next thing, trying to get more and more accolades, achievements and things like that, learn how to really appreciate the moment is one, but learn how to recognize your emotions, right? Like, I think being very aware of like, at this point of time, how did I feel? And I try to have a habit of not trying to change it per se, not, of course life is very fast-paced, but I try to make sure that I at least take a mental picture of how it looked like at that time, and that's what helped me for now, for instance. There's temptation to stay in the US, blah, blah, but because I have a mental picture of how I felt like back then, that helped me to be like, increase my conviction that, okay, yeah.
And to stay true to that self right then.
Sort of, yeah, I think.
Or to even choose to maintain that picture of yourself.
Yeah, and then, even when it comes to things that you sort of regret, there's this book by Daniel Pink called The Power of Regret. I'm in the middle of reading it right now, but having a mental picture of, maybe you're going for like a big competition or something, having a mental picture of what you felt before, what you felt during, if you didn't win the gold medal, let's say, what you felt after, having a mental picture of that sort of, if you need like sometimes you want to do hard things, let's say, and you need a push to yourself, right? Having that sort of chip on your shoulder, having a good mental picture of how you felt at that time, I think may be able to just push you, give you that sort of push. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for a wonderful interview. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ooh, all right, let's get some protein.
Thank you.
All right.